For this session, I wrote 76 words. For this session, I wrote 56 words. For this session, I wrote 143 words. For this session, I wrote 72 words. Last week, I started making some small modifications to my writing process for my primary manuscript. I started writing by hand and then dictating or typing up my sessions into my running document. And this week, I have continued that practice, and I will have to say that I have been enjoying it so far. It's a different relationship with my manuscript, one that makes me more meditative in a way with my process. And I have been appreciating the practice of trusting what I write down without second guessing or making too many modifications in my train of thought. I have noticed, though, that handwriting a segment requires me still to edit in the document itself once I have it typed or dictated. So thus far, it is only at a level of drafting that I can achieve with handwriting my manuscript. And I'm definitely not at the level of processing my thoughts via handwriting as I am with typing. But it has been an interesting experience having those base words down to then work off of. When I type, for example, I can quickly delete and never see the words that I've deleted ever again. Whereas when I handwrite, even if I cross something out, I'm still looking at the words that I've already put down. That said, I've never really been a drafter before. I don't count collecting ideas or fragments of them as part of drafting. That's more brainstorming to me. But there is certainly something to it that I'm starting to pick up on. Perhaps there is an aspect of trusting my initial impressions of what I want to convey. And perhaps there is another aspect of connecting more with the words I write because I am manually bringing them to life via handwriting. There have been a couple of days this past week where I was just tempted to knock out my session from my computer, but I really wanted to challenge myself to see how long I could continue this handwriting first streak. And for me, since I don't have all that much practice writing via hand versus typing, gearing myself up to handwrite a session took a lot more from me than sitting for a typing session. However, I don't know that it was necessarily the handwriting portion because I have been also heavily working on my other project, which I've been referring to as my pet project. And astonishingly, for that project, I have about 4,200 words done and polished, and I have about 1,000 words still hanging around in my drafts. Along with figuring out my new writing flow via handwriting for my primary manuscript, I have also been thinking through some strategies for my pet project. The former I have been writing in daily, and the latter I have been writing in intermittently. Having now an idea of my natural spontaneous output for a creative project per month, I've been working on figuring out how I might increase that threshold without burning myself out. One strategy that has been working for me is a 2-day cutoff rule. I have found that it is so easy to get carried away by excitement when in the beginnings of a new project that seems very promising. But every time I pursue my writing in excitement, I end up burning myself out. And then 2 or 3 months later, I end up hating everything about it and losing all joy around it. So I've been implementing this 2-day cutoff rule where I will allow myself to binge write for no more than 2 days in a row at a time for this specific pet project. And if I have further desires to write, or if I have all of these ideas suddenly flooding in, I allow myself to collect them, but I do not allow myself to sit in my actual document to write polished anythings. And this has been working well for me so far because it forces me to take a step away from my project and to focus on other important aspects of my life, such as my physical well-being. And it forces me to engage with my pet project in other indirect angles. For example, in a more free-thinking, dispersed manner than a fixated, more linear one. I have been implementing the drafting by hand method with this project as well, and I've been finding that very, very interestingly, I have a natural affinity to coming up with the dialogue bits first when I draft by hand, and then I tend to build the scene or the ambiance around the dialogue. For some context, my primary manuscript is in a non-traditional style, whereas my pet project is in a traditional style. So to sum it up, the forced breaks have been incredibly beneficial for me. Instead of stopping when I have been completely depleted, I've noticed that integrating those breaks throughout the process in a regular manner actually allows me to stay fresh in it and sustain my excitement for a longer run. I want this pet project to be 200,000 words. I don't know at this point if that's going to happen because I'm still very much a pantser. I work chapter at a time and I work at it until I'm completely satisfied with it to put it down. I don't plan subsequent chapters. I have no rhyme or reason to how I collect my ideas. And when I do write the next chapter, it really often is an intuitive revelation. I know many writers tend to draft the entirety of a project before they will redraft and then final draft, but I personally don't enjoy that method because it can be incredibly overwhelming. And I'm also generally a meticulous type person, so leaving things unfinished or hanging for long stresses me out. Another huge reason why I hate that more popular method of drafting a complete project and then revising it is because I hate having to correct my writing from different levels of skill. And this is not to say that I think that I won't need a comprehensive edit down the road, but that my editing burden will be significantly lessened if I am more methodical with my chapters up front, and if I can troubleshoot my issues as I am progressing in a methodical manner. Then instead of having 100 big ticket issues to solve come the editing phase, I won't have nearly as much. I think people shy away from the meticulous approach because there has been this notion that it impedes creativity, but I would very much disagree on that. I think it's better to address your problem areas as you encounter them, even if it is a slower growth, because it's in coming to those solutions that you actually do grow in any discipline or skill. And the notion that your writing naturally gets better the more you write, I also disagree on. I think less than it being natural, as in happening without your awareness, it happens when you are intentional with your trouble spots. And if you have a really big issue that you're encountering in your writing in chapter 1 or 2, you will be encountering that in chapter 3 and 4 and so on if you don't address it. And then come editing time, you're going to be having to repeat all of those corrections throughout your work. I think people are also averse to the methodical approach because there is this notion that it slows the process down or that it perpetuates overthinking. but I think that's a misunderstanding on how to troubleshoot. If you encounter something off about your work in progress, I think it is vital to be able to articulate what that dissonance is. And at the beginning, it can be very difficult to puzzle out what the issue is, but the more and more you practice the troubleshooting aspect, the easier it actually becomes, and the easier it also is to then find the resources to help you fix those issues. And when it comes to the umbrella of troubleshooting, I think there are three main categories to it. The issues are generally going to fall under the category of needing to take a break, to take care of yourself, to brush up on some skill or learn some new techniques, or to read more books. And when you encounter problem areas and you are able to diagnose, to self-correct, then those issues become less and less as you progress in your writing. At least that's what I'm learning so far. And I used to be so impatient with my process. I used to be the productivity champion. But after many experiences in burnout and physical injury, I have finally come around to rethinking my process in writing. I share my takes on process because I think that the popular ways aren't necessarily the best for mental and physical wellness. Just because something can be done doesn't mean that that's the only way or that that's the best way. And just because something may look impressive doesn't mean that it doesn't come with skeletons in its closet as well. Personally, at this stage of my life, burnout is absolutely unacceptable to me. I don't think any creative endeavor should cost all that. And I think creativity can be something that constantly fills our cups and gives us more life every single day. And to the notion that there is no gain without pain, I disagree. I don't think progress need be painful or inflict suffering. I think there is a very significant difference in stretching oneself and overkill. That is it for this vlog, and I will see you in the next one.